Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for another exciting installment of the Customer Success Skills Exchange. We are so lucky today to have Cindy Blake and Fernando Diaz with us today. We are going to be talking about security, everybody's favorite topic. So specifically, we'll be talking about DevSecOps solutions and strategies, how to best manage head-to-head comparison of our out-of-the-box open source analyzers, and we'll be doing a little technical workshop. And then questions and answers. So I will put the doc into the chat. Please add your questions to that doc. And Cindy and Fern, the stage is yours.
All right, well, thank you. So I don't want to go over a lot of the material that was in the pre-work. Fern and I have kind of a rich list of content there. But what I'd like to do is just point out a couple of things that have either changed recently or are unique or different. Just to draw attention to those. So the first is, it's been a while since I've done a talk with the TAMs and the SAs, and our approach on integrations has improved since SCO earlier this year. And so we've got some integrations that have been done that partners have done, like WhiteSource. Checkmarks is working on one. There are others. And we have an integration page you can direct people to if they say, hey, could you integrate with so-and-so? Absolutely. Here's a page on what they need to do and how to do it. The other is the vulnerability management is somewhat new. And so you may have heard it referred to as standalone vulnerabilities or vulnerabilities as first class vulnerabilities. The idea is it was re-architected a bit so that we could do vulnerability management and treat them more like a security person would. And what we're moving towards is the ability to do more risk management. So we highlight the actual risk, not just the fact that you've got a vulnerable code, but what's the likelihood of its exploit. Another key direction we're going is around policy automation. And so being able to set the policy, whatever your risk appetite is, set your policy to reflect that appetite and have GitLab do the automation. So you'll see some improvements coming out around how we do that. We're really excited about the fuzzing acquisitions that were made a couple weeks ago for Peach and Fuzzit. And the pre-work has links for the a lot of the material, the press release, the video. I would encourage you to look at, I'll share my screen here just a minute. If you haven't seen the slides that accompany that fuzzing topic, please look at, I'm going to be adding this, I think, to the security overview deck. It shows how to position fuzzing. It's really about finding unknown things. So when most of the scanning that we do is around known vulnerabilities. So do you have anything that we know would be a vulnerability in your code? But fuzzing is really about finding things that you didn't know to ask. And there's two ways of doing it. The market may refer to these as black box and white box, meaning black box is you can't see inside, it's kind of hidden. It's a testing method that you may not really see the details of. White box being more transparent, but we wanted to get rid of those terms, so we're calling them coverage guided and protocol based fuzzing. And those things are very complementary to the other types of scanning that we do. They're also proprietary through those acquisitions and will not be moved down to the lower tiers. So and I think there's a whole enablement around those topics, but I wanted to be sure and point that out so that you understand where those things fit. Real quickly too, I want to make sure that everybody has seen this. There's an external DevSecOps page and an internal page. This external page is solutions/DevSecOps. It's going to get a facelift here in the next few weeks. We're trying to make the pages more actionable and more marketing-ish. Here's one already before you go. What have you thought about? And then this internal resource page, in fact, I just had an activation team meeting. So all of the use cases or solutions, kind of use those terms interchangeably, are oriented around, we've got all these great GitLab capabilities. Now, how do you package those in a way that aligns to what people are buying? And so for DevSecOps, there's a set of things that people are looking for, and that is in this market requirement. So this resource page begins with an external outside-in view. What are people looking for in the market when they have a project or a budget to accomplish DevSecOps, and they're trying to do security in a DevOps and Agile environment? What are they usually looking for? And this gathered that information together with that outside view. And then we look at how does GitLab do that? So we take those outside market requirements and we say, how does GitLab deliver those? How does that align to our categories? And Fern has created these fabulous demos that go into a lot more detail on how to set them up, how to use them, what are the benefits. So I want to make sure that you know that those things are there. Another thing that I just added in the last couple of weeks that I think will be particularly useful for this group are the discovery questions. And the way to read this is, here's like 6 questions to figure out what's their pain point, because different people do DevSecOps for different reasons. So they might be doing it because they want to remediate faster. They might be doing it for a compliance reason. They might be doing it because they've got tool challenges. So see if you can figure out where to go from there. And then these questions go like, so if they're mostly worried about finding security vulnerabilities, then drop down here to the section number 1, and there's more questions that expand upon that. And so that's kind of how to read this. I'm not savvy enough to do an expand and collapse thing on the web, but so this is helpful for you, as well as potential objections. And I want to dig in here for just a minute and make sure that you know things about a couple of the objections that we tend to get and how to respond to those. So the first is, I have an incumbent tool, I have Fortify or Veracode or whatever, and I want to know, how does your scanning compare? And my advice to y'all has always been, and will continue to be, it's best not to go into that head-to-head comparison, because they probably have a little bit of religion behind that one, where they've put their career on the line for spending $1 million for Fortify or $1 million for Veracode. They're going to be reluctant to change. So really, it's not around how my scan results compare to your scan results, but what you do with those scan results. It's all about getting it to the developer in their native workflow. Now, that said, this is going to sound like a little bit of a reversal, but it's not intended to be. We do have one scan study that compares our Java static analyzer with that of Coverity, which is Synopsys, and Fortify, which belongs to Micro Focus. And so we've added that to those comparison pages, just kind of FYI, and I'm running over time here, so I'm gonna wrap up real quick. The other thing is we get into trouble, and have lately, with some misunderstandings around why we're a niche player in that Gartner Magic Quadrant. So I would encourage you to please, please, please read that blog. We are a niche player not because our scanners are subpar, but because of our market. So you got to remember that analysts look at our business strategy and our market in addition to the product capabilities. They put us as a niche because we're really intended for GitLab users. You probably, if you're not using GitLab for source code management nor for CI, or maybe for anything else, it really wouldn't make sense to use GitLab Secure Capabilities as a standalone. That's why we're a niche. But so a couple key points there I wanted to make sure I pointed out. And now I'm going to turn it over to, stop sharing. Need to turn it over to Fern here because he's got some great technical demos and things that he wants to point out. And the first part I'm real excited about because this is the first time we've really shown what we're doing around the defend category. So defend is starting to mature, starting to get some really cool products out there. You need to be aware of it. You know, you can talk about shift left with scanning, but shift right with the defend side in terms of securing your production operations. So Fern, take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Cindy.
Do we have a chance for a couple of questions?
Sure.
So Cindy, really good to see you. DT, really quick, and sorry, Fern, you've done some amazing work. I love your videos, so sorry to interrupt. Two quick questions. One is, do we have on any other languages doing that like comparison of our scanners? You mentioned Java. Are there others like in the queue?
There are, I'm not sure exactly which ones, because it's kind of the security research team is, or threat research team is doing it, and it's kind of taken as they can work stuff in. So yeah, I don't want to set up any expectations there. The way I positioned it on those comparison pages is, you know, you should expect that other scanners would be similarly compared. So, you know, we're pulling in open source scanners that have been proven, and lots of people are using them and working on them.
Yeah, and I love the graph. It's a great first example. If there's more to come, I'm looking forward to it. The second one is regarding fuzz testing. When we think about SAST, let's start SAST. We have been evolving over the quarters of language support for different languages. When we talk about DAST, it's just for web portals through OAuth ZAP. For fuzz testing, quick question is, what kind of constraints do we have for what fuzz testing can provide? Is it like, can we do like backend server-side apps? Can we do serverless stuff? Can we do web apps? Like where does the fuzz testing come into play?
I'm probably not the best person to answer that. And I think that that's a great question for the fuzz testing session that Sam and David are going to do.
Okay.
If we could just defer that.
No worries. Yeah, no worries. Just top of mind. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Do we want to do the API question, Fern? You've got an answer here.
Let me see. So for the API question, it says, is there an API that allows people to programmatically export the report into the preferred dashboarding tool? So right now, you'll only be able to export it as a CSV with that endpoint, and that right now is not documented, but there is a merge request that shows that that API endpoint is available, and you can make requests to it and grab the CSV file. But you can just grab the CSV file, and then you'll have to export that manually or import it manually to the dashboard that you want to view it in. So yeah, I hope that answered that question.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and I see there's some questions on fuzz testing, but I really don't want to divert too much time and attention since there's a whole session coming up on fuzz testing.
Yeah, we can try to answer those at the end of this session, and I'll just jump into some demos now and kind of go over this, and then as we gather all the questions, we'll try to answer them as best we can.
Perfect, thank you.
So so just to start, the two topics I'm going to start with are part of defend, as Cindy mentioned, which means exactly how we protect the system and how we secure the system after the code has already made its way to production. So instead of catching the vulnerabilities, you know, before they go into the code and before they're in production machines, how do we defend the system after everything has already been merged? And there's there's three things we have in place. One is the web application firewall. One is the container network security, and the third piece is the container host security. So I'm going to go over a short demo that I've put together just to showcase how to install these tools and how to actually get some results from them. So let me go ahead and share my screen. So, okay, can everyone see? Okay, so I've created this project, just so you're aware of it. It's called Simply Simple Notes. It's a simple note-taking application that I created just to demo off all the different secure features. So it's there in the pre-work if you ever want to use it for customer engagement or just to show off some of the capabilities or make demos, you're more than welcome to use this project. It's already been set up with, with a couple of different vulnerabilities within it and really showcases our tools. So once you have that, once you're in this project, there's a few things that you need to do to set up container network security and container host security. And that's create GitLab managed apps. So this tells GitLab to install these applications on our Kubernetes cluster. And the ones that we need installed are Cilium, and we're also going to need Falco. And in order to display some of the graphs, we need Prometheus, and we'll need Ingress to be able to, just have a way to access our applications through the external world. So once you have all that installed, you also need to add a template to the GitLab CI YAML, which is managed cluster applications, and that'll tell GitLab to use that previous file that I showed you to go ahead and install these applications on a pipeline build. So once you have those two things in place, as well as a Kubernetes cluster that's linked to the project, and making sure that in the advanced settings, that under cluster management project, you have your GitLab project selected. So once you have those three things in place, what's going to happen is the pipeline is going to run. And this is a pipeline which I created, which will build the container. It'll run all these different static scans. It will deploy the staging environment and then run Dast on it. So I have a full security configuration. And what happens is everything that I showed you is going to be part of this apply phase, which will go ahead and install all the components and all the GitLab managed apps to my cluster. So now let me show you kind of what that looks like. So if I do a kubectl get pods -n GitLab managed apps, which is the namespace that GitLab creates, then I'll go ahead and see that Cilium was installed. I'll go ahead and see that Falco was installed, which is the container host security. Cilium is the container network security. Hubble is part of Cilium. And then we see the Ingress controller, Prometheus, and Vault, which I also installed, which is not part of this demo, but you can see that all these applications were installed. And now what I'm going to do is I will go ahead and show you a little bit about container network security. So in the pre-work, I did create a demo. So you should have access to this in case you want to see it. So what I'm doing here is I'm creating a network policy, which I have applied to the cluster, which says that incoming traffic to another pod can only come from a pod that has a label with access equals true. So container network security, basically what it is a Kubernetes firewall. And what it does is you can restrict traffic from different pods to different pods or different containers to different containers. So you can make sure that containers that shouldn't be communicating out to the wrong containers don't do that, because that can cause the system to break or it can degrade performance. And it can also, if someone were to intrude and get access to one container, you don't want them to be able to have access to other containers within the namespace. So this is one reason why you apply a network policy. And network policies have a variety of different rules. You can control egress, you can control ingress, and you can just configure it via a whole variety of ways. So now we're automatically installing this, and we're giving the user the power to be able to configure their firewall however they wish, and secure Kubernetes, which isn't secure off the bat. So I've already applied this network policy to my Kubernetes cluster. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get my service. So this is a application that I've launched called Notes SVC. And what it does is, yeah, it's a simple note that just takes takes notes and responds with what the notes are. And when I created the service, it was assigned the cluster IP, and that's the way that pods communicate internally within the namespace. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new BusyBox container, and I'm going to try to send a request to that IP. So what happens now is when I try to connect, you'll see that I'm not able to access that endpoint, and it times out. And in this container, I don't have the label called access equals true. So I'm going to go ahead and exit. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same exact thing, but now you can see that I'm creating it with the label access equals true. So now this is going to be a container running on the Simple Notes staging namespace, which is the same namespace as the Notes SVC. And now I'm going to run the same exact command. And now you can see that we actually we're able to establish a connection. And if I look at the index YAML, it'll give us what the basic Notepad responses. So we can see that we did have access to this. And the reason why I'm using wget instead of a curl would be because I'm running on a very limited container for this demo. So normally I would send a curl request and it would return back. So that is a very basic introduction to container network security. And it just shows that we can just configure a variety of different network rules. Now, it will involve some research into how best to configure an infrastructure, and how that is up to the customer and their architecture, but we just need to let them be aware that it is a feature that we do provide off the bat, and it is a feature that we do automatically install in the cluster with the right templates added to our pipeline. So just want to see, is there any questions so far on this topic?
Fernando,
Yeah.
I don't understand. This is policy.yaml. Is that a Kubernetes thing or GitLab?
Yeah. So it's strictly Kubernetes. So this YAML would be something that I would apply to my Kubernetes cluster via the CLI. Now, right now, we can't apply it through the actual GUI. So what the GUI supports, so what the this thing is on. Okay, so what this supports currently is if I go to security and compliance and threat monitoring, and let's move this to staging. Policies. You can see the policy here, but it won't actually show here, and we won't actually be able to edit it unless it's been applied through the CLI on the Kubernetes cluster. So yeah, Mark, that's it's a Kubernetes thing, and users will have to be familiar with Kubernetes in order to use this.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So sorry if I missed something, but just to be clear, the actual applying of the policy is within Kubernetes. The only GitLab feature is that we display it here the way you're showing, or did I miss some other GitLab feature?
So the GitLab feature is that we manage and install Cilium, which manages the network policies. That's one GitLab feature. And then the second GitLab feature is that you can see your policies via the GUI. but everything else has to be done via Kubernetes. So we set the basis and the deployment of the hard, we configure like the hard part, which is setting up the infrastructure to be able to use network policies. So that's what GitLab, the value that GitLab provides in this.
Cool.
Is there a good way to like show a policy being hit like during a demonstration that's super easy and intuitive for people to understand?
So with this demo, I think this would probably be the easiest way to show it, like how some other container can't communicate, and then show like how a container with certain rules can communicate. I wouldn't know any easier way.
Is there anything? I'm thinking like a non-internal threat, but like an external threat.
So this is mainly internal, because so an external threat would be someone got into the system, so or someone has access to the namespace, and they want to access a pod that they shouldn't have access to. So
So Cilium is really like completely distinct from the web application firewall, then, is what I'm hearing.
Correct. This is mostly for monitoring the internal traffic happening from container to container, not
Sweet.
From
that's my confusion. Thank you.
Yeah, and so maybe I'm not wrapping my head around this, but what problem is this solving for the customer?
So the main problem that this is solving, so there's two problems. The first problem is that so outside in the Kubernetes ecosystem, there's a lot of containers that can possibly communicate with other containers, right? And that can cause some unexpected behavior. So what you're doing is you're providing a firewall that locks down the communication between the different containers, so that way you don't have any unexpected behavior. So that would be one point. The second point would be you can limit, since you are limiting what access containers have to one another, then you're also limiting if anyone were to get onto the container for debugging, or some malicious user were to get into a container and have access to one, they wouldn't be able to access information from other containers. So like, let's say I have a container called like secret bank data, right? And let's say that there's no network policy towards that container. And then I have another container called Notepad, right? Now, somehow, if there were no network policy set up, let's say like, even though the bank container was super restrictive, since there's no network policy set up, if I got into the Notepad container and it shares the same namespace, I can also use my access from that container to access the bank container, and then draw information from there. So it provides those two levels of security. It's basically a firewall, but internally.
So it's very similar to Amazon security groups.
I'm not familiar with them, but...
Oh, okay. It's basically the same concept. You set up security groups that float. It's firewall rules that float and apply to anything you want to apply them to in your Amazon environment.
Mm-hmm.
So Fernando, if I have a file-based Java Spring Boot, I cannot apply this, right? Is that correct? Strictly, can I apply these policies?
It's got to be a containerized application that runs on Kubernetes as a pod. So
okay.
I guess it just depends how you deploy that Spring application.
And then Fernando, there was another thing that's on the drawing board for security that will be security inside the containers, kind of like malware inside containers, right?
Yeah, so I'll quickly go over that. There's not, so yeah, let me move on to container host security, and then I'll continue to answer questions. But the next thing that I want to go over is we do install Falco. So as part of the GitLab managed apps, I did install Falco. And what Falco does is it runs within the container, and it looks at the kernel and checks a bunch of like different possibly malicious changes within the system. So when I do kubectl managed apps, you can see that we have Falco running. And if I do clear, if I do kubectl logs, we can see that it reports a bunch of different things that it's detecting within the container runtime. So like it noticed a namespace change and noticed another namespace change. So it has all these different things that it scans for. And what you do is you can set up rules for the alerting. And what will happen is like something like Prometheus or Sysdig or whatever tool that you're using for parsing logs and alerting, it'll send these logs out, and then you can set up different alerts for different things detected within the system. Now, this is not something I've had a whole lot of time to play around with. I am expecting to play around with it more in the future and see like the value that that GitLab adds. Right now, all we do is just install it, and within values.yaml, which is how we configure the application, we can add certain rules, and that's all I know about this. And if you look at the Falco documentation, these are a few of the things that it checks for. Like privilege escalation would be a very important one to see if you're trying to get privileges that you shouldn't have, and that would be like a red flag, and that would alert the team and have the security team dive into why this behavior is happening. It could be a system breach. So it detects a lot of things. It outputs them to the syslog. And then from there, some type of alerting or log management tool would pick that up and set alerts on it. So that's as far as I've dug into this. I just wanted to make just the team aware that it is a feature that we're working on within Defend, and as it matures more, I'll probably generate some content around it.
I would like to suggest that container host security is a super bad name because it's utterly confusing with the fact that except for hostless fabrics like Kubernetes and Fargate, you have an actual thing called a container host. Mm-hmm. Not only that, things like CrowdStrike run on the container host, but do malware checking into the containers by having root there. It looks like Falco calls this cloud native runtime security. Maybe there's a way to align our product name so our customers don't get utterly confused as to where this is running.
Okay, yeah, we should, someone take note of that. We'll put that on the notes and look at how to better optimize this. Thanks for...
I'm taking notes. If somebody could help fill that in, it's hard for me to always see who's commenting and capture it all. So if you would please add, I appreciate it.
And then from there, let's see how much time we have. Okay, so I'd like to continue just for time's sake. Next topic I wanted to go over was the Jenkins integration. So have I just out of curiosity, like how many customers have y'all had using Jenkins and just really were against moving to GitLab or kind of scared to move to GitLab because they thought that they would need to migrate all their Jenkins pipelines before moving to GitLab pipelines?
Lots.
Hands raised.
Everyone, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, 40% to 60%. Yes.
Okay, so so a lot of people. Okay. So so I've come up with a demo to kind of make it easier on customers to kind of understand that it's not going to be so crazy or so tedious to migrate, that they can still keep their Jenkins pipelines intact, and they can use GitLab for source code management. They can use our security features. They can start with everything, and they can slowly start the migration process. So they'll be able to still, with minimal overhead, they'll be able to still use Jenkins to run, you know, their build scripts. They'll use Jenkins to run their deployment scripts, but they'll have everything housed within GitLab. And it'll take some time to migrate, but it won't take as long as migrating all the Jenkins jobs over to GitLab. It'll just be kind of having a Jenkins job trigger a GitLab pipeline, or having a GitLab pipeline trigger a Jenkins job. So I put it in the pre-work, but there is a demo project that's part of the GitLab demo system that shows how you can get Jenkins working. There's a video up, and there's also a blog that's scheduled to be released sometime next week. So a few of the things I wanted to go over is just kind of how easy it is to do this and how we can show customers. So here we have a pipeline which runs build, runs security scan, SAST, checks if that security scan actually actually passed, like if there were actually any vulnerabilities detected. And if there were vulnerabilities detected, then we don't move on, it'll be blocked. But if there weren't vulnerabilities detected, then we'll deploy. And the thing is that this build stage calls a file which calls a Jenkins pipeline. So build is actually coming from Jenkins. It's not really a GitLab job per se, it's a Jenkins job. So build is being called in Jenkins. Then we're running security scans after the containers have been built. We're running security scans. And then after the security scans complete, right? Now we're verifying, were there any vulnerabilities detected? So we're checking, hey, were there any vulnerabilities detected? So there was none found, okay, we passed. Now we're gonna call Jenkins again and actually deploy to the staging environment using Jenkins. And this external will show us the Jenkins job. So if I click on it, I should be able to go to Jenkins in here. Okay, I don't remember what my password is, but it'll go ahead and take you to Jenkins. And from Jenkins, you'll be able to see the status of the job. So, and I'm doing that with these simple Python scripts that I built. Now they're just using the Jenkins API. Python is not the only language that you can use. You can use a variety of different languages or just bash or just send curl requests. But essentially what this is doing is it's just talking to the Jenkins server, and it's just triggering a job to build with the job name that I pass in. And then from there, it's just checking to see what the result of the job that I triggered is. And then after a certain amount of time, after checking every 2 minutes to see if the Jenkins after trying every 2 minutes to see if the Jenkins job has completed or not, then it'll post the result to GitLab. So I have a video that goes over all the instructions on how to set up Jenkins and how to set up GitLab for this integration to be possible.
And when Jenkins fails, what do you do?
So if Jenkins were to fail, then this pipeline right here would fail. So this would fail right here. This would be a red X. And then what you would have to do is you would either have to go to Jenkins, because it could be a issue with the script in Jenkins, or you would have to check the script that calls Jenkins. It would involve a developer to troubleshoot.
So is this the thing that the product team calls the Jenkins wrapper, or is that something different?
So the Jenkins wrapper is being used here, right? It's within Jenkins. So when you're in your Jenkins view and your Jenkins pipeline, there is what is a GitLab wrapper, which just tells GitLab to communicate with Jenkins, right? So it's it tells, like, when the Jenkins job runs and finishes, it'll send the request to GitLab to notify. So it pretty much does this, where it sends the Jenkins job status to an external job. So that's what the wrapper does, if I'm correct about it being the same thing we're talking about.
I was under the impression that the Jenkins wrapper was like a container that started up Jenkins, but maybe I'm wrong on that.
No, I think you're right, Tim. I think this is something different.
Yeah, I'm with you, Tim. I think it's the same.
The wrapper was basically running an instance of Jenkins within a container, whereas this sounds something quite different.
Okay, yeah, if it were a container running an instance of Jenkins, that would just be a Jenkins deployment that GitLab offers to just easily deploy it, but this is something different.
So this could be firing off any Jenkins job on an instance. It's their existing instance. They don't have to do anything special with it beforehand.
They do have to install a plugin. That's what I thought you were referring to, the wrapper. They do have to install a GitLab plugin, which is available on the Jenkins marketplace. And once that's installed, the video that I posted will go over like the different ways of actually configuring the server to do this. It's pretty, once you do it once you install the plugin once, it will already apply to all your Jenkins jobs, and then you'll have to add like a small configuration on each Jenkins job to talk to GitLab. It's pretty much just saying like connect with GitLab, like a little radio button that says that.
So basically, you don't have to change their Jenkins jobs at all, right? Is that correct?
Minimal change. Yeah, Mark, it'll be a minimal change. They'll have to just make sure that that Jenkins, it'll be like a click, like they'll go into their Jenkins job, they'll click a button that says report to GitLab, once this job has complete, and that's pretty much what they need to change, and maybe like another option or two, but the video highlights the changes that need to be done.
It's huge. Okay, thanks.
Hey, I have a question here. It might sound hostile, but I'm not trying to sound hostile. But let me see if I can phrase the question in a nice way. So if I have an existing Jenkins job, I have to write a Py script based on this example. I have to write a Py script per job to integrate with it.
So I wrote one per job, but you don't have to write one per job, and it doesn't necessarily need to be a Python script. It could be a bash script. And depending on how you write it, you can pretty much write one script where like the job itself will be able to pick up what job needs to run based on what stage it's in. So it just really,
yeah, sorry. But then my question is, if I'm a customer and I'm writing the script, then what integration is GitLab offering me? It's me making the script. It's me making a REST call. It's me tracking the result. It's me polling. It's me returning an exit code which fails the pipeline.
You're correct on that. Like there still needs to be some interaction. The benefit that the customer is getting here, and that's a good question. The benefit that the customer is getting here is that they can, even though they have to write, let's say they have to write this Python script for the build job, and it can be the same script for the deploy job, just passing different parameters. It allows them to be able to go back into Jenkins and see what the job status is via this little external endpoint is one thing. And it lets security scans still be run, but you'd be able to keep calling Jenkins and using it. I mean, it still requires some overhead, but it's just kind of to ease the customer in, like, hey, you don't need to like move everything to GitLab CI.YAML because you're already using Jenkins. It just kind of takes away that fear that you can write an easy small script that will call the job, and it'll show the job status here, and it'll block if the status fails. So it just shows that you can use both pipelines together.
Right.
And Fernando, I think I recall a video you just put out that, to my surprise and excitement, showed a pipeline where you can heterogeneously pull in Jenkins at different spots. And so you can still use GitLab as the source of truth for the code, but you might have Jenkins doing like the builds and maybe like the tests, but you can still use us for the rest of the stuff.
Correct, and you can mix and match what you want to use and where you want to use. Yeah, thanks for
that was brilliant, by the way. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So thank you for what you do.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so yeah, just take a look at the pre-work, take a look at the video, and then hopefully that blog comes out next week, and then you'll be able to show that to customers. Let's see how much time we have. Okay, we got 15 minutes, so I'll make the next two things quick. So air-gapped environments. So what air-gapped environments do is they allow a customer with a very limited environment, and by very limited, I mean in terms of network. It's an environment that has very limited connectivity or has no access to the internet. And these customers typically be a bank, or they can be different state departments or whatever it be, and they just do not want any access to the outside world. It's a very restricted system. And what ends up happening here is they still want to make sure that the containers within the system are not vulnerable, or that the application code that's being developed is not vulnerable. So how can that be done? This is where we came up with air-gapped environments. And what air-gapped environments do is they allow us to actually download the container images for our tools. For example, Bandit is the tool that scans SAST on Python. And what we're able to do is we're able to actually have these in our local container registry. So we're able to, we'll have to push these images and have them scanned beforehand to a container registry with these copies. and update it in a certain way. So this would be up to the customer. They'd have to have some procedure around this. But once they have a procedure around this, then what will happen is that the image from GitLab will live in their container registry. And then by changing a few things within the GitLab variables, it'll talk to the container registry image instead of talking to the public image. And that way, since all these containers and all these images are internally to the user, they'll be able to run the same security scans. And a big thing, which is up to the user process, is updating these things frequently, and that will be up to the customer. And that's a process that they have to put in place. We just offer the images, and we just offer a way of accessing the images within GitLab to actually scan your code in an offline environment. So that's pretty much the basic idea around that, and it is offered for a whole variety of different scans. So I'm planning on creating a video demo on this before the end of the quarter. So just stay tuned for that with just more information and more highlights on this. But right now within this page, you can see exactly what offline environments are and exactly how to set up different scanners using these instructions. So it's available for 5 different types of scanning. And then from there, I'll move on to the last topic, which is cool new features. And just to show that, just so I can leave some time for questions. One of the features is within the security dashboard, and it's this button here, which allows us to export all our vulnerabilities as a CSV file. So we'd click that, and then a file should be exported. So you should be able to see an exported file that contains a CSV of all the vulnerabilities and everything. And then from there, it's up to the developer to parse this data however needed, or do whatever it is with the data, or move it into a monitoring tool. But this is one new feature that we offer. And then the next important feature that customers would be interested in would be the merge request approvals. So if you look at this merge request that I added, because I set up merge request approvals for vulnerability check, you can see, and license check is also applicable. So if there are any licenses which are deemed invalid, or there are any vulnerabilities detected within the system, the merge request cannot be approved unless someone from the appropriate team has approved them. So for license check, if there is a license which has been blocked, then that means that one of these 4 people, that let's say they're part of legal, or they're part of some type of legal security team, then they would have to make sure that this project can be used and approved. Same goes for vulnerability check. If a certain vulnerability is detected, then what ends up happening is that someone from the security team would need to approve before before this can be merged. So, and these approvals are set up in settings general, and you go to merge request approvals, and here you can set up vulnerability check, you can set up license check, and you can set up exactly who you want to be part of that group. So you'll add them based off of GitLab groups. And there's also a variety of different things that you can add, like the same person who submitted the merge request can't merge it, and must be merged by, can't be merged by a committer or by author. So there's different rules that you can set. And this, if you ever need to show anyone, this is highlighted within this video that's shown in the cool new features section. So yeah, those are the main points I wanted to add in this discussion. And yeah, now I'm open to any questions and anything that y'all want to add and are interested about.
Thank you very much for a wonderful, wonderful session. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Can you share all the project links? We're trying to grab them all, but not very successful.
Should be in the doc.
It's in the document, Jerry.
Oh, I was
So,
clicking.
so,
Okay, I
so
will check.
Fernanda, when did license check come out? Where you could
License check, that's been a feature. That feature has been out for a while.
You're kidding.
I think it's from the 12 dot something release. I can't remember. So probably 12.0.
Remember vulnerability check. I didn't know about license check. Okay.
Hey, Fernando, this is straight dope stuff, man. It's fantastic, really. A question about the vulnerability check. Has that changed? If I recall, that only comes into play if things are like at critical or high, right? Vulnerabilities, is that how that?
I think
where
it's
that triggers?
high, critical, and unknown.
Unknown. Okay, unknown also. Okay, thanks. Gotcha. Cool. Thank you.
So when does license check kick in?
So license check kicks in. So for licenses, and I'll add it to the pre-work as well.
Someone says 13.2. That's recent.
So license check should have. There might be some new features around it, but license check's been available for a bit. Let me
There
show
are, I think, two things. There is license management and there is license check.
So if you look at, let's go back to this. So if you look at the security and you look at license compliance, this is what I was referring to, where I would add different policies around what licenses are allowed and what licenses aren't allowed. And if there are any dependencies or anything within the project that detected any of these licenses, then the license check would block the merge request from being merged.
But I think the dynamic rule just got introduced in 13.
And that's what I think.
Hmm.
It's great to have.
Yeah. There's also an issue open for a compliance check as well.
Yeah. Like once I do more research on that, I'll be happy to. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be generating a lot of content around compliance and things like that once.
So can I use you with the customer, Fernando, or what?
Yeah, I'd be open to that for sure.
Okay.
There's a way to make requests. So through strategic marketing, so you can make a request for a TMM, which is what my role in the company with technical marketing manager. So you can make a request and then fill out exactly what you need, and then from there I can help out and jump in.
Great. I got an opportunity. We can move forward quicker. Thanks.
Awesome. So yeah, it's been a great session. I really enjoyed showcasing these features. So thanks everyone for attending.
Edmund has a question.
Yeah, one more question for you. At the beginning, you talked about integrations from other security tools and with other security tools. Where is that documented? I couldn't find a link.
So talking about other security tools, Cindy has done a great write-up. And I believe in the pre-work, it is in the DevSecOps use case resource page. So if you go there, there is a section on our partners.
Yeah, we'll be adding some more. White Source is the one that did it eloquently and did it the way that we asked them to. A lot of other vendors have done integrations that don't necessarily drive people to Ultimate. So we've gone back and said, if you want us to co-market this with you, you need to do it in our prescribed way. And so that's kind of where we are with check marks. They've done some things as a POV, and we're helping them redirect to make sure that it's done because we want a consistent user experience. And so White Source, if you Google White Source GitLab integration, the actual instructions and details are on their page, not ours. We're asking that the other vendors take the effort of keeping that information.
So Cindy, is it all the same APIs or different for each vendor? You know?
No, it's the same. We have an API that we didn't have probably, I don't remember how long ago, but like a year ago we didn't have it. And Nicole and Sam have created a document on the handbook page that explains more prescriptively what the vendor needs to do. You can link to it or you can get to it from that overall alliances link that I put in the pre-work.
Cindy, this is actually a good topic because I'm sure I'm going to come across this from my customers. looking at the security scanner integration, and really it's about getting a job, some type of results file that we can parse, I think, looking at it real quickly. Customers are going to say, well, if I'm using my own tools and I want to incorporate that into my GitLab instance, why do I need to buy Ultimate as opposed to Premium? And I don't see an Ultimate either.
So
I don't find that very difficult to explain.
You need Ultimate because you need to be able to have those scan results in the merge request pipeline, and you need to have it in your dashboard. If they don't use Ultimate, what they get is a really ugly JSON file that they have to parse and figure out and do something with. So we are doing that integration level with Ultimate. And in fact, the way that WhiteSource has done it, you can run our scanners and theirs, and in the pipeline and the dashboard, you see the list of the vulnerabilities, and it shows a logo for where it came from. So if it was a WhiteSource finding, it can also help people have greater confidence in their findings, because if they run our open source scanners and they run whatever existing scanners that they're using, and they can see that side by side, it's the same thing that ThreatFix is doing with the Denim Group. They've created a whole application that they sell to do just that, that compares results of different scanners to improve the confidence in the findings. So there's a side benefit there.
Mm-hmm. I'm familiar with that one. So just going back to the documentation on security scanner integration, and I'll post this link into the docs so everybody's got it. We don't make any reference here that this is a ultimate capability, or we don't badge it at all for any type of paid version of GitLab from in the docs. And yet in the first paragraph, we say these results are then automatically presented in various places in GitLab, such as the merge request widget and security dashboard. So I think we need to clarify if this is limited to Ultimate, we need to make that clear in the docs.
Okay, if you could put that in your questions with the links.
Yeah.
I will check it out and make sure that it's accurate and consistent.
I think that value of getting it in front of developers, Cindy, one thing I just noticed recently, which I hadn't picked up before, was that the merge request security reports do not bubble up because they're not in the default branch. And that's a really helpful elimination of noise so that developers have to deal with this stuff. And if you just dump an artifacts file in there, the chances they're going to spend the time to wheedle through it, figure out if that's a duplicate report, all that other stuff is just way low. So I think the automation enablement on this is massive value, and it's important to be able to be audible ready on why that is such a big part of the value.
And Darwin, if you can help articulate that, just to, that's a great point. I'd be happy to add that wherever I can, because I think that's a really excellent point.
I actually have a slide I created that talks about this right before I do a security demo. Goes into great detail of the cycle for the developer and then the overview views. And I can share that with you in a course link of it being delivered as well.
Okay, that'd be great.
It's gold.
That would be wonderful if you could share that. And let me raise this as a point. I'm sure y'all are coming up with ways of articulating things to your customers. You're probably doing things with demos and whatever. Please get those back to me so that I can help share those more broadly. I can, if you've got a great slide, I can bake it into the security overview.
Well, actually, so this does bring up a point that I don't think it's appropriate there, because it takes 10 minutes plus to get through this slide. So we have an issue here where right before I go into a demo that shows all the screens and it gets confusing for them to track how this helps them, I need a slide that actually gets really in depth with just that part. And so that's why I'm not sure if this is actually good for an overview demo deck, but maybe we need a whole other set of decks where right before I go to demo, I'm getting lots of requests for security specific demo. And so right before that demo, we might need special slides that just really tear it up and give a really good view. And the current overview slides might be fine for exec level or even mid-level tech manager.
I hate to cut us off, but we are actually over time. But what I can do is, I think we definitely need to continue the conversation. So I would love anybody go in and open an issue and detail exactly what you would like to see covered in a future session. We would be happy to have Cindy and Fern join us again and have another topic to focus on.
Thank y'all.
Thank you all so much.
Great session.
So helpful.
Thank you.
Thanks
Really
for all
good.
the great conversations and questions. Thank you to Cindy and Fern. We will see you all next week to continue the security topic.
Thanks, Fern.
Bye.
Thank you. That was great.
Bye, you're welcome.
Enjoyed the demo.
Wow. Thank you. Bye.